Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Dr. Sunny Slaughter, how are you? It's good to see you. Look, okay, so this is my very first live stream, like for real. And as you can see, I got my little assistant with me. She is not feeling well today. So I'm going to wait to see who joins, if anyone joins today. And we're going to be discussing the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Let's give everyone a minute and see who joins us. Hey, everybody. What y'all doing? Hey. Somebody say, hey, I'm here. Let me know that you're here. In case you haven't met her, this is Kova Rain. She's not feeling so well today. Yeah, of course, she decides to get sick because it's my first live. So let's see what happens. Either way, I'm going to go forward with this conversation, and I just would like to thank everyone who has supported me throughout the years and everything that I have tried to do, and the work that I have been so focused on around crime and criminal justice and community. And let's see. Okay, nobody yet, but Kova, it just might be you and me tonight. Is that going to be okay? Well, we'll see. Yeah, we're going to see. Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's live stream on Sean Diddy Combs, an autopsy on the federal trial. I'm Dr. Sunny Slaughter, and tonight we're going beyond the headlines and into the courtroom. We're going to dissect this 7-week federal trial examining witness testimony, jury deliberations, the convictions, and what it means moving forward. So if you haven't gotten your coffee or wine or water or whatever you're drinking, or if you haven't gotten one of my new mugs, come and go with me to court. So if you are a true crime person, then, or it's just someone that really focuses on entertainment and is a fan of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, then this is a conversation for you. You know, I've been covering this trial and what is unfolding in this case for a very long time. And of course, somebody will be calling now that I'm on the air. So let's see. Hold on 1 second and let's see what. Hey, hold on. Hey, I'm doing my first live stream. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm doing my first live stream. You okay? Okay. Well, I'll talk to you. Okay, huh? Thanks. Okay. All right. Bye. Sorry about that. It was one of the attorneys. I wanted to make sure everything was okay. But we're using, I wanted to, today on Court TV, I did my segment on with Julie Grant to and Mario and Tommy Pope. And we discussed the recent interview that Laura Coates did on CNN with one of the alternate jurors, not the deliberating jurors, but one of the alternate jurors. And I actually have that clip that I am going to run. Hopefully, we'll get a few more people because I want to run that after we have more of a conversation. But this morning on the 8 a.m. hour for the power panel, I had the opportunity to weigh in on what I thought about the juries, the alternate juries' comments regarding the freak offs, and that they weren't all of that, he said, not too terrible, essentially. So I introduced something that I've been working on called E3. And this framework that I'll be using tonight and going forward on this case and others is really around E3 stands for experience, exposure, and expectation. And it is to examine how jurors form their opinions, how the media impacts courtroom perception, and how verdicts are shaped by public opinion, their interaction, and all of these interacting components when it comes to high profile cases and other cases. We've been seeing the E3 lens around this in a lot of cases these days. And I was glad to have the opportunity to talk about this. And I'll talk about this more today. But I wanted to break down some key events across the 7-week trial and talk about some standout witness testimony and what changed the tone of the case and potentially jury deliberation takeaways, including, like I said, Laura Coates' interview with her folks, the alternate juror. So how do you think, in your own estimation, in your own life experience, how do you think life experiences shape the views of a defendant or a witness? Because is there potential bias and what that looks like? So we're going to talk more about that tonight. But let's talk about the trial itself. I was talking, hey, Rhonda Davis, I see you. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Rhonda, I appreciate it. I didn't think anybody was going to join me today, but I appreciate you. I wanted to go over something. I was talking to one of my other colleagues on Court TV this afternoon, Corey, and what he said was, and what we discussed was the fact that maybe the federal government and the state, because it's not just the federal government that has used RICO. If you recall the case of Young Thug down in Georgia in Fulton County Courthouse, Bonnie Willis has used RICO, the state RICO statute also. And so we've had a trial, a federal trial using RICO. We've had a state trial using RICO, and neither one of those, and I'm talking about recently, have come to fruition where a jury could make a decision regarding RICO. So let me explain. And I took a lot of notes, and I decided I'm going to talk from my notes because I don't want to miss anything. And let me know what your thoughts are, really. This is a federal indictment overview. The unsealed by the United States Attorney's Office in September of 2024, the indictment charged Combs with racketeering conspiracy, RICO. And the allegations was that he led a criminal enterprise utilizing his bad boy entertainment enterprise that engaged in predicate crimes, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, narcotics distribution, and obstruction of justice. Now, that is what a RICO is. RICO is a culmination of crimes, which most people have might recognize under for the mob. That's how RICO actually came about, because this was the way the mob. John Gotti was the first case that I worked on involving RICO. And thank you, Rhonda. Yeah, I only have one of the babies here with me tonight. And so RICO is not that commonplace for individuals, just ordinary citizens and ordinary trials, but it is something very important. The other charges for Sean Diddy Combs' case involve sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. And he was accused of coercing women into sexual activities using drugs, violence, threats, and power dynamics. One of the things that I did notice about these charges was the lack of mention around men potentially being coerced into these actions. And Diddy is alleged to have had some male victims. So I'm not sure why they didn't charge that, but apparently they did not. And then number 3 was the transportation to engage in prostitution. It's called the Mann Act. And some people might not know what the Mann Act is, but let me explain it to you. The allegations are involved transporting 2 former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and the second accuser, referred to as Jane, across state lines for illicit sexual acts tied to organized freak-offs. Very specific there. Okay. Now, transportation across state lines. He went to alleged different hotels. I'm not going to say alleged because this was one of the convictions, but going to hotels in different cities, different locations, different states. And I think one was even out of the country. So that's why that charge was there under the Mann Act. Additionally, charges included kidnapping, arson, and other underlying crimes, but some were dropped before closing arguments. If you recall, the case, the arson charge involved Kid Cudi and the allegations, which were never proven, never addressed, but the allegations did not have substantive evidence, nor was he ever charged during the time that Kid Cudi's car was on fire. And even though they reportedly did an investigation into the crimes. So as we think about what he was charged with, I think the RICO was the most compelling and the most daunting, and why the jury could not find anything, relative to what the RICO was, and whether they met their burden. So when you think about E3 experiences and exposure, and what that entails, and even think about the evidence, I don't think during the voir dire of the jury, did they ask the right questions? Did they ask relevant questions? And even though some questions are about, what are your experiences? Do do people often and always understand their own experiences? Do they understand that they could be victims and not necessarily have addressed this in a way that their victimization either makes sense to them, or they don't have any biases, or they don't see themselves as having biases? Because some people don't even suspect that they have biases around this, and or that their experiences are tied in to uh, what they will think and how they will perceive their service as a member of a jury. Even though we say we ask the questions, it's not that you can't share your own experiences, but do you understand how that impacts who you are, how you are, and the way that you see your own life? So can you actually address the way you understand the victimization of others? Is it clear enough for you? And it might not be clear, and that would make sense, not because he wasn't convicted of the RICO, but did the prosecution prove their case enough? And did they explain RICO in a way that made sense? Or did the jury just say they didn't meet their burden? So one of the things I was thinking about was some of the key factors in the verdict based on what we've heard from the jury, based on their questions initially, was for the RICO and sex trafficking. I believe the jury found insufficient proof that Combs ran a coordinated criminal enterprise, despite extensive testimony about the freak-offs and alleged abuse. Did the video of Cassie and her trying to leave not coincide with all of the other actions and the text messages? When it comes to victimization, a lot of times people see if there's no whips and chains, and people are handcuffed and constantly think of how we have identified sex trafficking and human trafficking and labor trafficking. One of the things that I've always said, I'm a globally recognized expert on human trafficking. And one of the things that I have said that we have done, those experts and organizations, is the danger of a single narrative. And human trafficking, sex trafficking in particular, has a dangerous, limited narrative around, which has placed thoughts around what people think sex trafficking looks like, because it looks like young people. It looks like people held captive. It looks like a kidnapping where somebody's snatched off the streets, not necessarily a relationship. And a lot of times people are in relationships, or they become normalized to their controller and their abuser. And that is a form of coercive behavior. Coercive control is the term that we use, coercive control around some of these behaviors. And, it can be daunting to explain, but, I got confused, or not confused, but concerned that so many people minimized domestic violence, because they said, well, he should have been charged with domestic violence. Well, human trafficking laws have components and intersecting components of domestic violence in it. So because he wasn't charged on the state level, do you understand that human trafficking on the federal level is addressed under the Violence Against Women Act? Because it almost was like it's just a state issue and not a federal issue. And because the feds didn't specifically say domestic violence and he wasn't charged there, could that have been one of the reasons? Do you think that's one of the reasons? Huh? Do you think that's one of the reasons? No, you don't know? Do you think it's one of the reasons? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, do you think had they charged him with that, it might have been an explainer? No. Oh, okay. No, possibly not. Well, COVID does not seem to think so. And these executive assistants these days, they have their own. She's a Gen X pup. So, we have different views on things. We don't always agree in our house, do we? Okay. Okay. Do you want to get down? Okay. Well, mommy will let you get down. But um, the other thing around key verdicts in the trial on the transportation charges, jurors determined that he did transport individuals for prostitution violations. There was testimony from those that said, they went to the hotel, they transported drugs at the hotel and to hotels, and other individuals did things. So apparently that was something that people could actually agree upon. Now you didn't want to stay up here, and now you see this is what happened with these kids. So let me go back to explaining the Mann Act. Okay, hold on. Let me get my assistant again, because the assistant is going. I think that the assistant is going to be problematic during these sessions, because she doesn't want to sit still. She's had a little tummy ache. But let's talk about the Mann Act. It is under federal section 18 USC section 2421. Makes it a federal crime to knowingly transport an individual across state lines for the purposes of engaging in prostitution or other illegal sexual activity. So much focus was on the fact about the baby oil and the hypersexuality of all of the things that were engaged in. And I think so much focus was there until we missed the opportunity to really focus on the criminal behavior and the violence of it all, and how submission and coercive control play a role in how people respond and behave around these issues and what happens. So one of the reasons why I believe that the jury convicted on the Mann Act, okay, baby, okay, was that the flight records and the hotel stays. So prosecutors presented travel documents, private jet manifests, and hotel bookings showing that Combs arranged interstate travel for two women, including Cassie Ventura, for the purposes of attending freak-off parties. Okay, the jury found these logistics to be clearly tied to prearranged sexual activities. And the testimony of Cassie Ventura testified that she was flown to Miami, Las Vegas, and New York for what she described as orchestrated sexual events, often involving third parties and power dynamics she could not refuse. Think about the hotel video of her being violently attacked, okay? Secondly, an unnamed victim, referred to as Jane Doe 2, gave graphic, emotional, compelling testimony about being coached, flown, and expected to participate in sex acts, often in exchange for gifts, money, or music deals. Now, some people have said, well, they got something in exchange, but does that matter? Okay, does that make a difference? There was also digital communication. The government submitted text messages and emails and voicemails where Combs allegedly instructed assistants to book travel and describe plans for these events. Oh, my assistant is going to be fired. You're going to be fired if you don't sit still. Okay? In some cases, the communications included direct or veiled references to sexual expectations. Okay. And so that's specific content. Okay. Corroborating witnesses, former staff members, drivers, and bodyguard testified to repeatedly witnessing women being transported, often under questionable circumstances. And this formed the basis for a pattern of behavior. And although RICO was not proven, I'm going to explain it below, that the jury believed that in these specific cases, Combs knowingly used the interstate to travel to further acts of prostitution, satisfying the elements of the Mann Act. However, when it came to RICO, okay, I'm going to have to put my assistant down. And my assistant is probably going to cry because the assistant does not want to behave. But the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corruption Organized Act requires prosecutors to prove that the defendant did several things: participated in an ongoing criminal enterprise, that enterprise engaged in a pattern of racketeering activity, and that the defendant committed or directed at least two qualifying offenses, such as sex trafficking, bribery, arson, obstruction, in the furtherance of that enterprise. There were weak points in the RICO case. There was a lack of clear enterprise structure. Prosecutors described Combs' inner circle, bad boy staff, and hired security as a criminal enterprise. But the defense argued, and the jury seemed to agree, that this was a loose network of employees, not an organized crime ring, acting in criminal coordinated intent. And that's why they could not meet that burden. They also, the jury didn't see that some witnesses even undercut each other's own accounts of everything that was happening. For example, one assistant testified to detailed planning, but another claimed that they were all unaware of the illegal activities. So the inconsistencies raised a reasonable doubt which was necessary to prove that there was a conspiracy. And there was also too much focus on the celebrity's lifestyle. Defense attorneys successfully reframed the parties as part of the music industry's wild culture. No proof of a criminal enterprise. Jurors were constantly reminded not to conflate excess and immorality with illegality. Come here. So that's why. And that was really significant defense strategy, not to conflate excess and immorality with illegality, okay? There was no smoking gun documents. Unlike the Mann Act charges, there were no clear documented orders or plans outlining how the enterprise operated. So without the emails and recordings or financials connecting the crime acts to a structured opinion operation, jurors saw a gap. And lastly, and more importantly, we have to, okay, come here. Let's see if I can get my assistant to cooperate. Hold on. Yeah. Come on, assistant. Let's see if you'll cooperate. Public perception versus legal standard. RICO is a high bar to prove. It requires jurors to find that Combs personally orchestrated or was deeply involved in coordinating the underlying crimes as part of a larger scheme. While the jury may have believed abuse occurred, they didn't find that it rose to the criminal organized level that the prosecution thought it would. So, it just did not match up. So what was Combs charged with? He was charged with 2 counts of the Mann Act, and that's what he was convicted of. The RICO conspiracy, he was acquitted of. The sex trafficking, he was acquitted of. And, under the law, they didn't feel like the victims' accounts were insufficient to show coercion, force, and fraud. So what do we have here? What happens? And what do we believe? It's hard to say, but Although I personally believe that they were going to meet the burden, honestly, we all get it wrong. And I absolutely, along with others, got it wrong. Not that there was not evidence, but that the evidence was not proven and that the defense had a better strategy. And they also didn't put on a case. They don't have to put on a case. They don't have to prove anything. They just have to raise reasonable doubt. And they did enough of that to ensure that their client was not convicted of the most serious charges. But I don't want the public to get dissuaded or ignore the fact that he was convicted of 2 criminal charges. Those 2 charges carry up to 10 years. And that's nothing light. 10 years is a long time. And they can run consecutive. He can be sentenced consecutively or concurrently, and the judge will make that decision. And the fact that the judge did not grant bail was very telling and very interesting. I know there have been reports of family members and others posting things online. He's not done yet. And I think people should wait and they should not celebrate, because 10 years is a long time. Apparently, the sentencing is scheduled right now for October the 3rd. However, his attorneys are going back, as they should. And I was quite surprised that the judge did not grant him bail. That's unusual. But the judge said that his attorneys even said that he might be violent, but he didn't do all of the things that he's accused of. So the judge actually used his attorney's own words against him to ensure and to determine that bail was not warranted at this time. That's unusual. I really did think they already have his passport. They can set parameters around probation and around his access and the things that he has to do, reporting requirements, how often he has to report it, and what he has to do. But the charges that he is still a convicted felon on 2 federal charges, which means he will not be able to be around other convicted felons. He will not be able to have access or a firearm. He can no longer engage in the drug-fueled activities that he did once before, because that would be a violation of his conviction and any probation that they set up for him once he is released. So while this is a win from life imprisonment, if you understand anything about our jury system, our criminal justice system, and how people can really become disengaged and disheartened, but he has money now, so that makes it different by the parameters that are set. They can impose travel restrictions on him. And with all the social media, people will be watching. Law enforcement will be watching, and anything that he does that can trigger any violations could potentially put him back in court and put him in jeopardy again. So while he might not go to prison on these charges for a lifetime, any violations can send him to jail again for a long time. And that is what we should think about, and that is what people should remember. And the celebration in the streets, I thought it was just disrespectful and just not necessary. And people are I think they think they're supporting him when really they should focus on ensuring that whatever it is that led him to do some of the things that he may have done, that he rethinks his journey going forward. As Brian Stevenson once said, we are all better than the worst things that have ever happened to us. And I believe that for him, just like I believe it for others. And he has the opportunity to turn this all around and to change behaviors and to change practices. But we'll see. We will absolutely see. So let me share this with my audience here. I wanted to show you this here. Let's see if I can get it to work. Let's see. Is it gonna let me do it? I don't know. It's letting me do everything else, but let's see what happens here. Oh wait, this is Laura Coates' video. So, why did Sean Diddy Combs get convicted on the Mann Act but acquitted of RICO? So, this is just a quick outline here of that for everyone. And then be sure to go and check out Laura Coates' her interview with the alternate juror, and let me know what you think. Well, first live, I had a few people to join, not a lot of people, but it's okay. We still went through it, and I still did it. So I'm learning, and this is a learning curve for me and you, not for the work that I'm doing, but just using StreamYard for how to have these conversations. And let me tell you, I've been doing television for a long time, and people think it's really easy to show up and have these conversations, but it's not. A lot of times you get a lot of heat, but it's okay. You still got to keep going. And sometimes people don't agree, but it is still necessary to have these conversations. So hopefully people will join me later, and we will have more of these discussions. And I look forward to them. And I look forward to unpacking more cases, more opportunities to talk about crime, criminal justice, and community, and to discuss high-profile trials like the Sean Diddy Combs one. And I look forward to having some of my colleagues join me for these very important discussions, because although this may have happened in one location and this happened to someone that you might not know, this could easily be a case that could impact the lives of so many others. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for following. Be sure to check out my clothing line, www.imthesunnyslaughter.shop. And be sure to grab your mug right here and a tire the next time that you want to come and go with me to court. My assistant, who is down there eating, we thank you for joining us. We look forward to next time. And stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you soon. Take care.